Hey everyone. So this is a part of a larger presentation, but I wanted to take this small piece out and then talk about it, and I'll talk about the other pieces as well later on. But this particular piece is about the idea collection for new automations or new processes or whatever. And the broader presentation is about implementing tools following specifically a Dynamo script. That it's more than just creating an automation. There's the technical debt that goes with it. There's the implementation, working with leadership, working with designers, different people throughout the firm to get it adopted. There's the process change that may be required. So there's training, documentation, and various other things to think about. Now, you can think of it similar to like software development. I'm not a software developer. There's a lot of history to software development. There's a lot of things I don't know, but this is kind of my personal experience, and I'm always trying to learn new things on how to implement or do things even better. So if there's any ideas at all, or if you see this this part of the presentation I show you today, and you think there's better ways to do it, let me know. I think that's the best way to grow and kind of continue learning these things. But this part of the presentation is more about the ideas. So it's collecting the ideas. And these are three ways of collecting ideas that I've highlighted. So organic would be like just through a conversation. So there's been lots of calls where I've been on with folks where they've showed me something or talked about something. I was like, oh, wait, I could automate that for you. And sometimes it's worth automating, sometimes it isn't. But there's a lot of things that come through organic conversations. And so I try to encourage everybody to have those conversations on their own with other people that they have, looking for those opportunities where we can improve. It could be an automation, it could be a change in the way we use our tools or the way we just do things in general. So there's a lot of opportunity in there, especially if you're thoughtful and you bring that up. Hey, let's think about our processes and the things that we do, and is there a better way to do it? We also have a thing internally at the firm I work for called Think Tank, and that's a place where people can submit ideas. And they can really submit almost any idea. It doesn't really matter. It's whatever. It doesn't have to be specific to Revit or any of the tools we use. And that's actually where, for this particular tool that I'm talking about, that's where this came from. So it was through the think tank. We also do this thing called process audits, where we look at particular programs or projects, and we look at the team, look at the models, look at the way they work, and then look for opportunities to improve, and then identify those opportunities, try to implement them, and then scale them outwards to other projects. So, like I mentioned, this particular automation came from the think tank. It was a mechanical designer who submitted it, and it was related to Revit and duct loss, so, or pressure drop. And I won't go into too much of that, and there's a slide that explains it a little bit more, but essentially their process was pulling information out of Revit and manually. So they'd select on an element, look at it, look at the supply type or the system type, and then the size of it, CFM, various information that they would then take and write into this Excel. So as you can imagine, that's an incredibly tedious process. So it's very manual. It's essentially people just manually updating Excel documents cell by cell. So the idea was, can we do this in a better way? Can we use Dynamo to do this? And I think this is important to mention, that this solution isn't perfect, in my opinion, and that it's a stepping stone to better BIM, because by implementing this process, it saves them time. It improves their quality because now they're running this instead of maybe making an assumption on the pressure drop. But it also encourages them to model better in Revit, so they're creating better connected systems with actual real data in it so that they can leverage the automation. So even though there's a couple extra steps added, the reduced amount of steps of all that manual work saves them time, and it creates a better quality project. But it sets us up for the future as well. So It addresses that need that if we were to try to implement a broader thing, like say I went into the MEP calculation API for Revit and created a way to calculate this internally. Well, we'd still need to address that people aren't modeling correctly or adding the data in there correctly. And we could maybe address that through automation. But this tool kind of addresses both things. It creates more, or it speeds it up. It pulls in more accurate data from Revit into Excel, but it also encourages folks to model better, add the data that's in there so they get a better grasp on why all these things are important. And there's obviously like various ways. There's active engagement, there's group meetings, there's cross-department interactions. There's so many ways of collecting ideas, but I do think you have to be proactive. And for me, it's not just about me trying to collect ideas or identify those opportunities, but also encourage others to do the same in their meetings and their conversations. They may be on a conversation with another designer where they say, hey, there's an automation, there's this other way of doing this that could save you time. So there's so many ways you could go about it, and it depends on your firm and how things are set up. Okay, so vetting the idea. I try to keep these slides very simple so that I can elaborate on them and even have back and forth about it. But clearly define the problem, so understand the problem, evaluate ROI and the operations impact, and then developing documentation. There's more to this as well, but for this particular idea, these were the three big things. So clearly defining the problem is, for me, what I did was I went and I talked to the designer. I talked to various designers. I tried to understand what pressure drop was, what was the manual process. And you can see below, this is a pressure drop table in Excel that is not filled in. And what they would do is they'd find the critical path in the flow of the duct, take all those elements, all the elements in green, they would fill those in below in the Excel, cell by cell, pretty much. So for me, it was a simple problem, right? I didn't have to, I didn't have to know the whole context or everything that's involved with pressure drop or all the design knowledge that goes into it. I just knew, okay, I need to go from a start to an end and collect those elements throughout that route, and then all the different branches, and pull that data into Excel. So I understood the context of it and how they worked in it, and then the problem that we needed to solve. This slide is just more explanation on what the duct loss is. So if you want to learn more about it, check out this link. This is a good link that explains what it is. I always get that question, but that's not the big takeaway from this. This is more about implementing tools than about this specific process. So evaluating potential ROI, and this is specific to potential ROI, not the broader impact on operations. We'll circle back on that in a second, but 200 plus designers, 100 hours, and then you could try to come up with some billable time for that as well. I like this, and I think this is a good way to spread the message and support the ideas, but I think it's not everything that's involved in a solution. Like, I'm not just trying to build a solution that just saves us time. There's so much more that goes into tools, and it can lower the barrier so that more people can get into it and do it. So you can say include more junior staff to actually run these automations rather than having them manually go through it. Now, don't get me wrong, I think there's value in learning the process, but for something like this where you're essentially taking data and you're putting it into Excel, you could learn that in a day and be done with it. And then what you can do is now that junior person can spend more time addressing the needs on the project, saving time there, and then taking that saved time and focusing on better mentoring from their mentors. So better conversations about the broader picture of how this impacts other design requirements, other design knowledge that would be beneficial for them so that they could be impactful and as valuable to the firm as possible. Frees up time for high value tasks, usage and quality outcomes. So this doesn't just save time, but it means that we get a better quality product. So there's less user error potentially being written into Excel. And then we can also spend more time with our clients addressing their specific needs. And then just doing this process when we need to quickly, rather than taking a week out of our schedule to focus on this. Now we can automate it and then focus on all the other little pieces that go into a project. I think that was kind of it, or actually, yeah, so this slide is the one I'm going to end on, but let me go back. So the broader impact on operations, this is important. Now, this example here is specific to this solution, but you have to think about it for any other solution you might have, or a new process, new tool. But for us, in the way that we manage Dynamo and why we have it to where we can easily scale it and it's easy to use across the firm, is we manage it per year for every Revit version. Now, that's easy, and it's kind of like economy of scale for one individual to manage that. It does mean they have more workload, but the benefit of 200 designers is they have something more stable. So when they open 22, we know that we've tested that Dynamo script for 22 and it works. And then 23 and 24 and so on. So we've tested them, we verified that it works. So the designer, when they open it, it actually works for them. We have it set up to where when they open up a Dynamo for 22, it's automatically pointed to the 22 location so that it runs on all the packages that may be associated with that script are all there as well. But it is a cost that needs to be thought through, and depending on the solution, it may be too big. An example is like the calculation API for Revit. Like if you were to go into that and build a solution, that's probably going to take some time to build a real solution that works. And there's going to be a lot of conversations that you have to have, a lot of testing. And so this at least create something where we're getting an ROI for us to build the bigger solution. But sometimes there isn't an opportunity to build something ahead of time quickly that can get us that return. And that's where evaluating all of these different steps can help you determine if that automation or that process is worth doing. Because it may be like, this is just too much technical debt, we don't have the support to do it, and we're not going to get return on investment even if we create it. I don't have these two pictures here updated, but essentially to help mitigate some technical debt, and it also kind of creates it, but I think it's how you go about it and how your firm is. But developing documentation and training can help quite a bit. So documenting the process, documenting the outliers that may happen or the things that this doesn't support, creating trainings for people to use, and then having the ability for people to update those anytime there's something that changes or needs to be addressed that wasn't addressed, or something, some new error that you ran into, or some new use case that doesn't apply. Having them having the power to update those things can reduce the technical debt on yourself if you're maintaining all of this. But that doesn't mean it goes away entirely. There's still technical debt with supporting like new features that you need to include and then document. So, but it does help so that not everybody goes to you for every time they need to learn this tool. But having that documentation, those processes out there, recorded trainings can help quite a bit. All right, so this is the last slide for this part, and it's just other considerations. I may add more to this, and if you have ideas, let me know. But process change can dramatically impact the scope of this, or scope of implementing a new process or tool. And an example would be like CAD to Revit. CAD to Revit is a huge thing. It's a huge mindset shift. Revit is a 3D modeling tool. It works within the BIM ecosystem, so there's a lot of data involved. The elements are smart, whereas CAD, it's mostly 2D lines. And so the shift from that CAD workflow to Revit is pretty dramatic, and it requires a lot more intention, a lot more training, and a lot more involvement from the folks trying to push that. So in this particular process, that wasn't as required as much because it didn't change the entirety of the process very much. It just added a couple extra steps, which is completing your modeling, connecting your systems, adding the data, but then also they can run the automation, essentially save 10 times the effort by modeling, run the automation, save 10 times the effort by doing all of that and having that automation there, just running and pulling all that data into Excel. So it wasn't as big, but it's something worth considering on different efforts or different things that you're trying to implement. So CAD to Revit is probably one of the more dramatic examples, but anything that requires a massive change in the way that people think or use the tools requires a little bit more thought into what might be required to get good adoption, usage out of it. There's probably a lot more testing in it. And there's just a lot more training and talking to people and working with leadership to get there. All right, so that's it. The next piece is like development phase, and then we actually go into the data aspects of this stuff and how to be proactive with monitoring it and working with power users, the people that are using tools quite a bit, working with leadership. So there's so many aspects to implementing tools. And again, I'm not an expert in this. I'm not a software developer. There's things that I'm trying to get better at and try to understand more of. But what I'm trying to show here is that hopefully just some cool ways that have worked for me and hopefully work for you as well. But anyways, that's all I've got today. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any comments, ideas, whatever. And then I will see you in the next one. See ya.